The Gamma Centauri space station wasn't exactly known for its excitement. Most days, Dr. Zara Novikov's biggest challenge was treating space adaptation sickness or the occasional maintenance injury. That changed the day the Lasarian diplomatic vessel docked. Zara was finishing her morning rounds when the emergency alert lit up her medical tablet. The message was unusual: urgent medical assistance requested. Lasarian ambassador. Sensitive condition. Absolute discretion required. She hurried to the diplomatic quarters, her mind racing through the database of Lasarian physiology she'd studied in xenomedicine training. The elegant crystalline beings were known for their resilience, medical emergencies were rare. The door slid open to reveal a sight that stopped her in her tracks. Ambassador Talia stood in the center of the room, her crystalline form shifting through shades of deep purple to anxious amber. Unlike the diplomatic broadcasts Zara had seen, where Lysarians maintained their humanoid shape, Talia's form was wavering, edges blurring with distress. "Doctor," Talia's voice chimed like crystal wind chimes, "I apologize for the urgency, but I find myself in an uncomfortable situation." Her crystalline surface rippled again, patches of her translucent skin darkening to almost black. "I'm experiencing sensations that are highly inappropriate for a diplomatic meeting." Zara activated her medical scanner, maintaining professional composure despite her fascination. She'd never been this close to a Lasarian before. Their species was notoriously private about their physical forms. "Can you describe the sensations, Ambassador?" "Please, call me Talia." The ambassador's form shimmered. "It's like thousands of tiny electrical pulses under my surface. The sensation is most distracting." She paused, her crystalline features taking on a deeper purple hue that Zara's xenobiology training identified as embarrassment. "It's particularly intense in certain, personal areas." Zara nodded, studying the scanner readings. "I'm detecting unusual cellular activity in your outer matrix. Almost like a reaction to..." She frowned at the data. "Ambassador, Talia, have you had any contact with non-standard materials recently? Anything outside your normal diplomatic protocols?" Talia's form rippled again. "Only the traditional greeting ceremony with the human delegation. The sharing of atmospheric samples, the customary handshake." She stopped, her crystalline surface pulsing rapidly. "The flowers. They insisted on presenting me with earth flowers." Zara's scanner beeped as it completed its analysis. "I'm detecting traces of organic compounds that seem to be interacting with your crystalline matrix. Nothing dangerous, but..." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "It seems to be triggering responses similar to what humans would call arousal." The ambassador's form practically vibrated with embarrassment, her color shifting to deep indigo. "That would explain the inappropriate sensations. Particularly when certain human delegates are nearby." Her crystalline eyes fixed on Zara with unexpected intensity. "When you're nearby." Zara felt her own cheeks warm, suddenly very aware of the ambassador's ethereal beauty. The way light played through her crystalline form was mesmerizing. I can synthesize a compound to neutralize the reaction," she managed, trying to maintain professional distance. "And if I'm not certain I want it neutralized?" Talia's voice had taken on a musical quality that sent shivers down Zara's spine. "My species values new experiences, Doctor. This sensation, while unexpected, is not entirely unwelcome." The medical scanner slipped slightly in Zara's suddenly damp palm. "That would be unprecedented. The diplomatic implications alone. Sometimes unprecedented experiences lead to the most significant breakthroughs." Talia moved closer, her crystalline form casting rainbow patterns across Zara's medical whites. Both diplomatic and personal. The scanner beeped again, registering Zara's elevated heart rate. She should step back, maintain professional distance, remember her medical ethics training. Instead, she found herself mesmerized by the play of light through Talia's form, the way her crystalline features seemed to soften as she drew closer. The treatment options, Zara's voice was embarrassingly husky. We should discuss. Yes, Talia agreed, now close enough that Zara could feel a slight vibration in the air between them. We should discuss many things. Starting with why my form responds so intensely to your presence. The medical emergency alert chose that moment to blare again, making them both jump. New diplomatic arrivals, routine medical screening required. Zara had never been so frustrated by standard protocols. I should. She gestured vaguely at the door. Of course. Talia stepped back, her form settling into a more composed arrangement. But perhaps we could continue this consultation later? For the sake of thorough medical documentation, of course. Of course, Zara agreed, trying to sound professional rather than eager. We'll need to monitor your condition closely. As she hurried to her next appointment, Zara couldn't help but smile. Space station life had just gotten a lot more interesting. The next few days on Gamma Centauri station were a delicate dance of professional duties and unspoken tension. Zara found herself checking her medical scanner for any trace of Talia's unique crystalline signature whenever she passed through the diplomatic sector. For purely medical reasons, she told herself. The diplomatic conference was in full swing, with representatives from 12 different species trying to negotiate new trade routes through contested space. Zara watched the public broadcasts, noticing how Talia's crystalline form would subtly shift color whenever their eyes met across the conference room. It was during one such broadcast that Zara noticed something odd. Her medical scanner picked up unusual energy signatures from the ventilation system, signatures that shouldn't be there. She was analyzing the data when her office door chimed. Enter, she called, expecting another routine patient. Instead, Talia glided in, her crystalline form immediately shifting to that deep purple hue that made Zara's heart race. Doctor, Talia's voice was strained, musical notes discordant. I believe we have a situation that requires your expertise. Zara activated her office's privacy protocols. Your condition has worsened? Changed, Talia corrected, her form rippling. The sensations are evolving. And I've noticed something concerning about the other delegates. She moved closer, lowering her voice despite the privacy shields. 3 other species have reported similar symptoms. All after contact with the human delegation's gifts. Zara's professional concern sharpened. That can't be coincidence. She pulled up her recent scans. I've detected unusual particles in the station's air circulation. Initially, I thought they were just environmental anomalies, but... a deliberate attempt to influence the negotiations? Talia's form flickered with anger, creating a mesmerizing light show that Zara found hard to look away from. Using biochemical agents to manipulate delegates' emotional states? Possibly, Zara agreed, forcing herself to focus on the data rather than the way Talia's crystalline surface seemed to pulse in time with her own heartbeat. But why? And who would have the capability to synthesize compounds that affect such diverse species? Someone who wants these negotiations to fail. Talia moved closer to examine the scanner readings, her crystalline form brushing against Zara's arm. The contact sent tingles through both of them. Or perhaps, someone who wants them to succeed in a very specific way. Zara tried to ignore the pleasant shock waves radiating from where their bodies touched. We need to investigate without alerting whoever's behind this. If we cause a diplomatic incident. Agreed. Talia's form shimmered with determination. We need access to the environmental control systems, and samples from all the affected delegates. She paused, her crystalline features softening. We'll have to work closely together. For the investigation. For the investigation, Zara echoed, already knowing they were both using it as an excuse. I'll need to monitor your condition regularly. Multiple times a day, perhaps. How thorough of you, Doctor. Was it her imagination, or did Talia's voice carry a hint of teasing? We should start immediately. These symptoms are quite demanding of attention. Their investigation began in earnest, though Zara found it increasingly difficult to maintain professional distance. Every scan required close proximity, every analysis meant hours working side by side. Talia's crystalline form would shift and shimmer, creating patterns that seemed designed to capture Zara's attention. These readings are fascinating, Zara commented during one late-night session, trying to focus on work rather than the way Talia's light played across her skin. The compound isn't just affecting physical responses, it's creating genuine emotional resonance. Is that what you'd call this? Talia's form rippled in a way that Zara was beginning to recognize as flirtatious. Emotional resonance? Before Zara could respond, her scanner alarm blared. The particle concentration in the ventilation system had spiked dramatically. Throughout the diplomatic sector, delegates would be experiencing intensified effects. This is it, Talia's voice rang with urgency. Someone's making their move. The final trade agreement votes are tomorrow. They rushed to the environmental control room, Zara using her medical override to gain access. Inside, they found evidence of tampering, and something else. These aren't just standard biochemical compounds, Zara realized, examining the delivery system. They're specifically tailored to each species' physiology. Someone with extensive medical knowledge. Someone with access to detailed biological data on all participating species, Talia added, her form pulsing with anger and something else, hurt? Someone like. The door slid open behind them. Someone like the station's chief medical officer, a familiar voice completed. They turned to find Dr. Marcus Reed, Zara's supervisor, pointing a medical scanner at them like a weapon. Step away from the controls. Why? Zara demanded, instinctively moving to shield Talia despite knowing her crystalline form was far more durable than human flesh. Because peace doesn't pay, Reed's smile was cold. Do you know how much certain corporations profit from trade disputes? How much they're willing to pay to ensure negotiations fail? By manipulating delegates' emotional states, Talia's voice rang with disgust. Making them too distracted to focus on negotiations. That was the original plan, Reed agreed. But then something unexpected happened. The compounds created genuine connections. Empathy. Understanding. His scanner whined as it powered up. Can't have that, can we? Zara's mind raced. The ventilation system was still pumping out the enhanced compounds. Throughout the station, delegates would be experiencing heightened emotions, heightened connections. Actually, she smiled, reaching slowly for her own scanner, I think that's exactly what we need. She slammed her hand down on the emergency ventilation override, flooding the room with concentrated particles. Reed staggered, overwhelmed by the sudden dose. In the confusion, Talia moved with liquid grace, her crystalline form flowing around him and solidifying to trap him in place. As station security responded to their alert, Zara couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Reed's attempt to manipulate emotions had backfired spectacularly. Around the station, delegates were forming genuine bonds, understanding each other on unprecedented levels. We should get you scanned, she told Talia once Reed was in custody. Make sure the concentrated exposure didn't affect you too severely. Oh, it affected me, Talia's form shimmered with what Zara now recognized as desire. But I don't think it was the compounds. Her crystalline hand found Zara's, sending sparks of pleasure through both of them. Some connections don't need chemical enhancement. As they headed to the medical bay, Zara couldn't help but agree. Whatever happened with the trade negotiations tomorrow, something far more interesting was being negotiated between them. The aftermath of Reed's arrest threw the station into chaos. Security teams swarmed the medical bay, diplomatic protocols were suspended, and Zara found herself in endless debriefing sessions. The only bright spot was Talia's constant presence, her crystalline form a shimmer of support through the grueling investigations. "They're saying the trade negotiations will resume tomorrow," Talia announced, entering Zara's office after another round of diplomatic meetings. Her form rippled with concern. "But something doesn't feel right." Zara looked up from Reed's medical logs, which she'd been analyzing for clues. "What do you mean?" "The other delegates are too eager to resume talks." Talia's surface darkened with worry. As if Reed's arrest solved everything. But if he was working for corporations wanting to disrupt negotiations, then there should be more resistance, Zara finished, feeling a chill. Unless he wasn't working for who he claimed. Talia moved closer, her crystalline form casting prismatic patterns across Zara's desk. "What have you found in his records?" Zara pulled up the data on her holographic display. "Inconsistencies. The compounds he used, they're too sophisticated for one person to develop, even with station resources. And look at these molecular signatures." Talia leaned in, her form brushing against Zara's shoulder. The contact sent pleasant shivers through both of them, but they forced themselves to focus on the crisis at hand. "These patterns," Talia's voice chimed with recognition. "They're similar to Lacerian bonding chemicals." "What?" Zara turned sharply, accidentally passing her hand through Talia's crystalline form. The sensation was electric, making them both gasp. "Sorry, I..." "Don't be," Talia's voice was husky. "But we should focus on the implications. These compounds incorporate Lacerian chemical technology that's supposed to be secret." Zara's mind raced. "Could someone in your delegation be involved?" "Worse." Talia's form pulsed with distress. "This could be sanctioned by my government. The Lacerian High Council has been pushing for increased influence in this sector. By manipulating other species into forming emotional bonds?" Zara frowned. "That seems effective?" Talia suggested bitterly. "My people believe in the power of emotional connections. Our entire society is built on chemical and empathic bonds. Using that knowledge to influence diplomatic relations would be considered pragmatic." Zara reached out, hesitating just shy of touching Talia's shimmering surface. "But you don't agree?" "I believe connections should be genuine." Talia's form shifted, moving into Zara's touch. "Like this." The contact was overwhelming. Zara felt waves of emotion, Talia's emotions, flowing through her. Concern, determination, and something deeper, more intimate. "We need proof," Zara managed, though she didn't pull away. "If your government is behind this, then exposing them could trigger an interstellar incident." Talia's form rippled with resolve. "But we can't let them manipulate people's feelings like this." They spent hours analyzing data, looking for evidence. Zara found herself increasingly distracted by Talia's presence, the way her crystalline form would pulse in time with emotional revelations, how she seemed to glow brighter whenever their hands touched. "Look at this," Talia suddenly chimed, her excitement making her surface sparkle. "These transmission logs." Reed was receiving regular encrypted messages from a Lacerian frequency. Zara pulled up the encryption pattern. "Can you decode it?" "Better." Talia's form shimmered with determination. "I can trace it. It's coming from..." Her voice faltered. "The High Counselor's private channel." Before they could process this revelation, the station's lights flickered. Emergency protocols engaged, sealing them in the medical bay. "That's not good," Zara muttered, checking her systems. "Someone's initiated a station-wide lockdown. They know we've discovered the truth." Talia's form condensed, becoming more crystalline and protective. "The High Council won't let this evidence get out." The medical bay doors sparked as someone attempted to override the security. Zara quickly began transferring data to secure channels. Talia, she said urgently, if your government is behind this, you could be charged with treason for helping me. Some things are worth the risk. Talia's form flowed around Zara protectively. Some connections are more important than politics. The doors began to glow red with cutting tools. They had minutes at most. I won't let them hurt you, Talia declared, her crystalline form hardening into a defensive barrier. And I won't let them use you as a scapegoat. Zara's fingers flew over her console, encrypting the evidence of the Lacerian Council's involvement. Whatever happens, we face it together. The doors began to melt inward. Talia's form pulsed with fierce determination and something else, something that made Zara's heart race despite their dire situation. Together, Talia agreed, her crystalline surface reflecting their united image. Always. As station security forces prepared to breach the medical bay, Zara and Talia stood firm, their bodies and spirits intertwined. Whatever came through those doors would face not just a human doctor and a Lacerian diplomat, but a bond that transcended species, politics, and even the vast distances between their worlds. The doors finally gave way with a thunderous crash, and chaos erupted in the medical bay. But through it all, Talia's crystalline form never left Zara's side, their connection growing stronger with each passing moment of crisis. Through the smoke of the breached doorway, a figure emerged that made Talia's crystalline form pulse with recognition. High Counselor Vena, her own crystalline structure a towering masterpiece of authority and power, swept into the medical bay flanked by both Lacerian guards and station security. Ambassador Talia, Vena's voice rang like steel chimes. You disappoint the Council deeply. The Council disappoints me, Talia responded, maintaining her protective position around Zara. Using our sacred bonding technology to manipulate other species? We're better than that. Zara clutched the data drive containing their evidence, her other hand intertwined with Talia's crystalline form. The sensation of their connection gave her strength. Better? Vena's form shifted colors rapidly, displaying agitation. We are ensuring peace through understanding. These lesser species cannot comprehend the depth of true connection without our guidance. Lesser species? Zara couldn't help but interject. I've experienced more genuine connection in the past few days than your manipulated bonds could ever create. Vena's attention shifted to Zara, her crystalline form looming. Ah yes, the human doctor. You've corrupted one of our finest diplomats with your primitive emotions. My emotions aren't primitive, Zara stood taller, drawing strength from Talia's supportive presence. And neither is our connection. You're not creating understanding, you're forcing artificial bonds for political gain. Politics? Talia's voice rang with sudden realization. No, this goes deeper. The trade routes, the timing. Her form pulsed with shock. You're preparing for invasion. Vena's surface briefly flashed a telling pattern before she could control it. The Council does what is necessary for our people's expansion. By weakening potential resistance through false bonds, Zara understood now. Making other species emotionally dependent on Lacerian influence before revealing your true intentions. The compounds weren't meant to fail, Vena admitted, her tone cold. They should have created permanent dependency. Instead, they fostered genuine connections. Like this, unfortunate attachment between you two. Unfortunate? Talia's form blazed with light. I've learned more about true connection from Zara than centuries of council doctrine. Our people believe in the power of bonds, but you've perverted that belief. As they spoke, Zara noticed movement at the edges of the room. Station security forces were slowly repositioning, some looking uncertain about their role in this increasingly political standoff. Your evidence changes nothing, Vena declared. The word of a human doctor and a traitor ambassador against the Lacerian High Council? The diplomatic community will never believe you. That's where you're wrong, a new voice entered the conversation. Station Commander Reyes stepped through the damaged doorway, accompanied by representatives from every species involved in the trade negotiations. "We've been monitoring this conversation," the commander continued, "and analyzing the evidence Dr. Novikov has been broadcasting to our secure channels for the past 10 minutes. Zara allowed herself a small smile. Those data transfers had been more than just securing evidence, they'd been a live feed to station command. "Impossible," Vena's form rippled with disbelief. "Our encryption was broken by someone who cared more about truth than power," Talia stated proudly. "I gave Dr. Novikov the decryption keys. My loyalty is to our people's true principles, not the Council's corruption." The other diplomatic representatives began to advance, their expressions ranging from anger to disappointment. "The Lysarian people will be informed of their Council's actions," the Centaurian delegate announced. "As will all our respective governments." "You're under arrest," Commander Reyes informed Vena. "Along with your conspirators. The evidence of attempted biochemical manipulation and planned military aggression is quite compelling." As station security moved to detain Vena and her guards, Talia's form finally relaxed its protective stance around Zara, but didn't break their connection. "I suspect I'll be recalled from my diplomatic post," Talia said softly, her crystalline surface shifting with emotion. "Actually," Commander Reyes interjected, "several delegations have specifically requested you remain as liaison. They seem to feel someone who would risk everything to expose the truth is exactly who we need for rebuilding trust." Zara squeezed their still-joined hands. "And the station's medical bay could use someone with expertise in xenobiological chemical interactions. Assuming you're interested in a more permanent position?" Talia's form glowed with joy, sending waves of emotion through their contact. "I believe that arrangement would be most satisfactory. For multiple reasons." As the diplomatic representatives began discussing new, genuine trade negotiations, Zara and Talia remained connected, their bond a testament to what was possible when connections were formed through truth rather than manipulation. "You know," Zara said thoughtfully, "we never did fully investigate your initial condition." Talia's form shimmered with what Zara now recognized as affectionate amusement. "Perhaps we should conduct a thorough examination. For medical documentation, of course." "Of course," Zara agreed, trying to hide her smile as they left the chaos of politics behind for the privacy of her office. "We wouldn't want to neglect any professional responsibilities." Their laughter, human and crystalline, mingled in perfect harmony as the medical bay doors closed behind them, marking the end of one adventure and the beginning of something far more interesting. In the months following the exposure of the High Council's plot, Gamma Centauri Station underwent dramatic changes. The new trade agreements, built on genuine understanding rather than manipulation, had transformed the station into a thriving hub of interspecies cooperation. But for Dr. Zara Novikov, the most significant change was personal. "Your crystalline resonance patterns are fascinating today," Zara observed, running her scanner over Talia's shimmering form. They were in their newly established xenobiology research lab, supposedly working on documenting Lysarian physiological responses. "Perhaps I'm simply happy to be here," Talia replied, her form rippling with pleasure at Zara's proximity. The patterns of light through her crystalline structure had become more complex over their time together, developing new colors that Zara swore she'd never seen before. Their lab had become a sanctuary of sorts, a place where science and intimacy blended seamlessly. The walls were lined with sophisticated monitoring equipment, but also displayed beautiful crystalline formations, gifts from Talia that caught the light in ways that made the whole room feel alive. "The latest results from the bonding research are promising," Zara said, setting down her scanner to admire how Talia's form seemed to dance with rainbow hues. "We've proven that natural emotional connections can facilitate physiological compatibility between species, without any artificial manipulation. A fact that has revolutionized interspecies medicine," Talia noted proudly. Her position as cultural liaison had expanded to include advisory roles in multiple scientific projects. Though I must admit, my favorite research subject remains rather specific. Zara felt her cheeks warm. After all this time, Talia could still make her blush. Speaking of research, there's something I've been wanting to discuss with you. She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a small crystal, similar to the ones decorating their lab but with a unique internal structure. Talia's form immediately pulsed with recognition. Zara, her voice chimed with emotion, is that a resonance crystal? Zara confirmed. I've been studying Lasarian bonding traditions. This crystal is designed to harmonize with your natural frequency, creating a permanent connection between us. If that's something you'd want. Talia's form blazed with joy so bright that the lab's sensors started beeping in alarm. You've learned our bonding rituals? I had help from some of your more progressive elders, Zara admitted. They were quite enthusiastic about documenting the first human Lasarian bonding ceremony. For scientific purposes, of course. Of course, Talia laughed, the sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. Though I suspect the council remnants will be less enthusiastic. Let them object, Zara said firmly. We've proven that real connections transcend political agendas. Besides, she grinned, how can they argue with thoroughly documented scientific research? Their moment was interrupted by an urgent message from Station Command. A new species had made contact, requesting emergency medical assistance for their diplomatic vessel. Their physiology was unlike anything in station records. Ready to make history again, Doctor? Talia's form shimmered with excitement. With you? Always. Zara carefully placed the resonance crystal in a special container designed to match Talia's frequency. Though maybe we should finish our personal discussion first. I believe the traditional response is. Talia's form flowed around Zara in what they'd come to call a crystalline embrace, her surface pulsing with patterns that needed no translation. Yes. Absolutely yes. The bonding ceremony took place a month later, combining Lasarian traditions with human elements in ways that had xenoanthropologists frantically taking notes. The resonance crystal, now suspended between them, created visible waves of energy that matched the rhythm of both Zara's heartbeat and Talia's crystalline pulses. Station records noted it as a milestone in interspecies relations. The medical department classified it as a breakthrough in xenobiological compatibility. The diplomatic corps called it a triumph of cultural integration. But for Zara and Talia, wrapped in their private moment as the crystal synchronized their life rhythms, it was simply the natural conclusion to a connection that had started with an unexpected medical emergency and blossomed into something that defied scientific explanation. You know, Zara murmured as they watched the twin suns set through the station's observation dome, their joined forms creating dancing lights across the walls, I never did properly thank you for that first urgent medical consultation. Talia's crystalline laughter sparkled through their now permanent bond. I believe you've quite thoroughly addressed that particular medical issue, Doctor. Their story became legend on Gamma Centauri Station. Future generations of medical officers would study their groundbreaking research into interspecies bonding. Diplomats would cite their case as proof that genuine connections could bridge any difference. But in their private moments, conducting their endless research into human-Lasarian relations, they knew the truth. Sometimes the most profound discoveries come not from careful scientific study, but from allowing yourself to experience something unprecedented. Something as simple as answering an emergency medical call and finding not just a patient, but a future you never imagined possible. The station's logs would show that Dr. Zara Novikov and Ambassador Talia went on to establish the premier xenobiology research center in the sector. Their work revolutionized interspecies medicine and diplomacy. But their greatest experiment, their own relationship, continued to yield new discoveries every day. After all, as they frequently reminded their students, the best science often begins with a simple observation, that love, like light through a crystal, knows no boundaries. It simply transforms everything it touches into something more beautiful than before.